The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello, friends, and thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week, we will dive into the off-season. We'll cover some Austin FC news, and we're going to chat with friend of the show, Jessica Luther. My name is Landon Cottom, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And on Thursday night, I will be at a middle school band concert watching my very favorite giant tuba player play. So I will not be at Hop Squad, but you will be at Hop Squad. And tell the people what you're going to do.
Yeah, so it's the Striker is putting this on, and it's kind of a end of season celebration of sorts. We're going to do a little panel discussion, Q&A kind of thing. And it's also Phil West's birthday. And so it should be a fun time. Just kind of sit down with some folks, talk about the season that was, the season that will be. But I think it's going to be Phil, myself, Sonny Guadarrama, Hernan from Top Flight. And then I think a few other folks are going to be around as well. So it should be a good time. So anybody who's free on Thursday evening, come hang out.
Yeah. What was it? And other special guests ? Do you know who the special guests are? You're just not sharing? Or
no, my
mom
know? Has texted me like 3 times, like, who's the special guest? And I was like, I know what's on that poster. That is all that has been told to me. I might be the special guest. I don't know.
And are your parents coming down for it?
No, they're not. I think they probably would if they were able to, but
they can't make a random Thursday.
No, these are the parents who, when I was playing in rock and roll bands in college, they would drive an hour from Lockney, Texas, like on a Wednesday night to come watch me play at a smoky bar in Lubbock. So they're very supportive of all of my endeavors. So I'm sure if they could be there, they would be.
I mean, they have customized Moon Tower 22 jerseys, so they were definitely there's nothing like the love of your mom and dad, I think, for sure. So, Landon, there are 3 heads in these Zoom box. So let's talk about. There's you and your guitar, which belonged to your grandfather. There's me with a random paint can and a soccer ball in the background. And then there's our friend Jessica Luther, who's also here. Jessica, how you doing?
I'm great. I got to be here for the beginning of Moon Tower to hear Landon do that intro. That was lovely.
Thanks.
And now we're just going to stare awkward. This is great. Audio is great for like us like staring and smiling at each other and trying to figure out who's just going to like take the next line. So welcome. What's going on? I love your little show cave and your bookshelf and all the things behind it. And we were super happy to have you back on to talk about just the season and Austin FC and like goodness and light and sunshine. So maybe let's talk about how you found Austin FC, Jessica Luther. Like what made this club and sport appeal to you?
That's a good question. How did I find it? Okay, that's actually a good question because I was talking to my friend Dan Solomon, who I report with all the time, and we were texting about Austin FC during the playoffs. He's not a big fan or anything like that, but I don't know what I was explaining to him. Something was happening. And I told him that I thought I had a koozie from 8 years ago when they were trying to get Austin an MLS team. And I had a friend who was like involved in that process. And I had gone to some thing at Pine House Pizza on Burnett, and I left with this koozie, and then I did the thing that I do because I'm an investigative reporter, and I just like have this terrible compulsion, I guess. And so I went onto Facebook and I like scrolled back through the Facebook page for this group, and the koozie was 8 years old. Like I had totally called it. So I've like known about the effort to bring the team for a really long time. I still have this koozie that we use in the house, and I don't know. I was just so excited. I'm a big sports fan and was one of those people who was just thrilled to have a professional team in the city. And then the stadium is really close to my house. My son actually went to the daycare that's like literally right next to it. And when they announced where it was going to be, I couldn't in my mind imagine that they were going to fit a soccer stadium in there. But lo and behold, they did. So it's like in our neighborhood. I just love going to sports things. I was excited to be a fan of a local team. So I was, I followed Chris Bills forever on Twitter. I don't know how long, but like I remember him writing about it, and And then I managed, though, I'm sure this will come up, to miss completely when season tickets went on sale. So like I am not a season ticket holder because I literally can't get them. So so I just go randomly whenever the weather and my wallet are favorable for me.
Well, I have 2 extra season tickets, so anytime you want to kick my parents out of their seats, y'all are
Oh,
welcome to come sit with
no,
us.
that sounds terrible.
They-
Not after you just explained how sweet your parents are.
They came to like 16 games this year. They can miss 1 or 2. They'll be okay.
Okay. Well, does that mean I have to stand in the supporter section?
No, I'm on the east side.
Oh, okay, good. Okay.
No,
That
Lin-
just seems exhausting to me. Like kudos to everyone who does it, but that looks like I'm like old.
Yeah, Landon has very tactical, like midfield second deck seats, so he can watch what's going on during the game. And then I just like am in the corner for the vibes and the beer, and have to go back and watch. And it's like I'm seeing the game again for the first time every time I watch it the second time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm endlessly impressed by the supporter section. I just think that I would be horrible in it.
So Austin had a much better season this year than they did last year.
Yeah, that's why I don't have season tickets because no one will give them up now. I was crossing my fingers that they wouldn't be as good and I could selfishly get season tickets out of it.
Over the last couple of years, who have been the players that you've that have endeared themselves to you? Who are your favorites to watch, or your favorites off the field, or both?
I mean, Sebastian. Like, I mean, it's really nice to. It was just a real, you've said this so much on the podcast, but like it was a real treat that we had this MVP caliber player just playing out of his mind most of the season. And then we got to witness that and cheer for him like that. Who knows what's going to happen moving forward? But I will forever be grateful to even get to experience a little piece of that. But, last year I really thought that Kolmanich would be better this year. Like I really felt like he wasn't even close to his ceiling. And so I was rooting for him at the beginning of the season. And then obviously he just didn't even get much playing time because John Gallagher was so exciting. It was so exciting to watch him move into that position so well. Little speed demon. Like that was great. My husband is 50% Norwegian because his mother is fully Norwegian. So Ruben is a big family favorite. He's also just good. And how many times has he saved our ass?
Ruben delivers on and off the field, definitely.
Oh my God, he's the funniest. He is so funny. Like every quote he's ever given. I listened to his interview with, I think I texted you guys this. I was on an airplane. Amira and I, my friend Amira, that I did Burn It All Down podcast with, we were flying back. We had done a live show at Notre Dame, and I was listening, and I was like laughing out loud on the airplane, and I felt kind of crazy, and I had to keep pausing it and explaining to Amira why I was laughing so hard. Yeah, he's delightful every single time he opens his mouth, but also just bless his heart because that back line is so much better with him on it. Yeah, it's like, who would I don't have like anyone's name on a jersey or something. But I feel like in this family, we'd probably get Gabrielson just because shout out to the Norwegians. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
What about like game day stuff? Is there like a ritual or like a facet of the stadium or a part of the whole experience that has been one of your favorites?
Well, I don't go to a ton of matches. Like this year I went to like a lot at the beginning because the weather was good. And then I become like, I don't like any of the extremes in the weather. So, but even though we did go to the first match where I was very, very cold, that is my memory, that and the 5 goals, and not believing what I was seeing. But I just really love Lamurga. Like, I just feel like, I don't know how many people spend a lot of time at other sporting events. It's such a special thing, like being in the stadium and like that level of fan it fandom like participation, I guess. It's just like I went with my friend to one of the matches. It wasn't an MLS. It was what is that? A friendly. I can't remember who came. And she had never been, and she was about to move out of town. So we went together so she could experience it. And it's just like, I feel like proud to like show her the stadium and like what La Murga's like, even at a friendly where like it doesn't even matter. So I really, really just, that part is so great.
Yeah, I went to the Soccer Assist their fundraiser the other night, and Adrian Healy was there and was talking to Adrian for a bit, and he was just talking about how much easier it makes his job to have that soundtrack in the stadium. Just because, like, I think if there's some stadiums in the country and in the world where I would imagine these TV commentators feel like they need to fill in some space, and if Adrian's ever quiet, it's fine.
It's there.
Because they're just like, okay, there's this great like atmosphere to listen to and take in.
And he's probably not having to manufacture emotion in the same way because it's like being provided. I will say we are watching the Welcome to Wrexham right now, and I do like that they have their individualized songs for their players. So I would like to challenge us to have like a super Sebastian Driussi song or something. Because that's pretty great. But yeah, I just love that part of it. Yeah, I don't know if I have a better answer than that. I was definitely like, I got real superstitious during the playoffs. I didn't know that I had that quite in me. Because again, my friend Amira is like really superstitious. Like she was really convinced that she like can control the outcomes of games based on her behavior. And so I often have to be the person telling her that no, if she leaves the room for a minute, they won't lose because of her, kind of thing. But man, by the playoffs, I was like wearing the same outfit every time, like same pants, same jersey, because I didn't want to be the reason they lost.
Well, I found myself doing that just more for like my sake. Just like, this worked for me last week and I was happy and comfortable. So but I do, yeah, I'm like one of the least superstitious people in the world, but I had to remind myself several times, like, your socks are not going to change the outcome of this game. It's fine.
But will they?
I know, you don't know, Landon.
You don't know.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's a risk that you take. As I say, you don't want to be the reason they lose.
I mean,
like, you won't be the reason they win, but you don't want to be the reason.
Speaking of my parents, they did not see an Austin FC loss all year. And like I said, they were at 15 or 16 games.
Wow.
0 losses.
We should have sent them to LA. That's what I'm hearing.
I know. We could have crowdfunded that.
All right. So Jessica, you mentioned Sebastian Driussi. You mentioned John Gallagher. There's been some news with both of these guys over the last few weeks. Yes. So let's jump in and talk about that a little bit. So there's been some rumors that Leeds United, as well as some other teams in England and other countries, are interested in Sebastian Driussi. So one question that some people have been asking me is this for real? Like, are these rumors true? And what I've told them is like, I mean, it's almost certainly true that there's interest, right? Like whether or not like this is actually happening or there's talks going on, we don't know yet. There has been little past these rumors, right? A lot of times, if there is a lot more smoke, you start seeing the Tom Bogerts and the Fabrizio Romanos of the world start tweeting about it. We haven't seen that yet. It has still just been rumors. But what I have told people is like, it is absolutely true that these teams are interested in this guy, because why wouldn't they be, right? And so there's been a lot of questions raised during the last week or so since this started. And one of them is, can he even play in England? So
yeah, I saw that. Explain that to me, Landon. Like, what's the holdup with is it like a visa thing?
Yeah, it is. It's requirements by the British government to get it's like an athlete visa to be able to get a work permit in the UK. And there's very strict criteria, and it's called GBE. I honestly don't know what that stands for, but they have a structure set up. This many or like this percentage of minutes in this tier of league gets you this many points. This many appearances with your national team gets you this many points. Appearances in Champions League gets you this many points. And you need to get to 15 points to get automatic approval. By amateur accounting, it looks like Driussi currently has 6 out of the required 15 points.
That's great
And
news. Sorry for Sebastian.
Well,
That's great
hold on.
news for me. Oh,
Hold on a
God.
second.
But
Okay, keep going.
So we saw some suggestions online that maybe, I mean, there's a lot of Argentinians have Italian passports. It's quite easy for, if you have any Italian heritage, to get an Italian passport. But post Brexit, even if Driussi does have an Italian passport, this does not help him. He would still have to meet those GBE criteria.
Wow.
So that one does not help him. But I was chatting online with a guy named Logan O'Coin today, and he was looking at like transfers into the Premier League, and he went through and found some folks who are very clearly do not meet these criteria, including Gaga Slonina from Chicago Fire. He went to Chelsea, did not meet any of the criteria, and got approved. Several other people who did not meet the criteria and got approved. So there is an appeal process that you can go through.
Yeah.
And it looks like with some of these guys, unless there's something that we're not seeing, that the appeals are more common these days and people are getting through without meeting the criteria. So it seems like if they wanted him to go and he wanted to go and the money was right, that it could happen, that he could go to Leeds. That aside, he could go to Germany, no problem. He could go to other countries, no problem. The work visa requirements are much less stringent there for athletes. So I think the more important questions in this scenario are, A, does he want to go? Because if he really wants to go and he's really pushing for it, I think even though he has a contract with Austin FC, they do not have to let him go if they don't want him to. A player putting pressure on a team like that can really affect a lot, right? Like,
Yeah.
if he really wants to go and they're not letting him, maybe he's not a player you want on your team next year based on performance or attitude or whatever. So that kind of stuff matters. But I think like hand in hand with that is the offer high enough? Because even if Driussi's saying, yeah, I really want to go, and Leeds is offering $6 million for him, they're like, no, we're not letting you go for that much money. Like, there's no way that that's happening. And so, yeah, like, do you guys have a feeling or like getting any sense of what the answer to those questions are?
well, I was very disturbed by the picture of him watching Leeds
Me too.
play on TV at home. Right? I was like,
I
this
wish
is all
someone
nonsense.
hadn't explained what I was
Yeah.
looking at. Then I would have been ignorant of it. But once someone explained, like once they made me zoom in, I was like, oh no. That's
Just
a terrible little Easter egg.
just drinking his mate, all happy, watching Leeds. Yeah, that was the point where I got fairly disturbed by that. Because to your point, I mean, for the most part, if a player wants something to happen, if a player of that profile wants something to happen badly enough, like it's gonna happen, and it's just a matter of the amount and the move. You know, and the time. The thing that gives me some hope is like there's not a lot of corollaries here, right? There's not a lot of guys that come from Europe, move to MLS, and go back to Europe for any kind of big money. I can't think of anybody who's done that. Can you, Landon?
Not off the top of my head, and I would be surprised if there were many at all.
So, I mean, I hope that he's such an outlier that doesn't happen. But if somebody's willing to throw that much money at him and he wants to go, like I don't see that there's anything that Austin FC can do to keep that from happening.
I always wonder I have no idea what it would be like to have someone want me that badly in any way. But I mean, this is like big fish, little pond, little fish, big pond kind of scenario too, right? Like he's very, very good here in this league. And I imagine he will be very good next year if he stays here in this league. But I don't know if he goes over and plays in the EPL that, you know, he might not get that same kind of love that he is experiencing here, the same kind of feeling. and embrace that he gets here. And I don't know how much that matters to these athletes. Like, I just don't have a good sense of that. I also don't know what it's like for his family, how much they like it here, if how much they're willing to like just go with the flow and move wherever. I'm sure there's probably a certain amount of money for most people that makes all that easier. But yeah, I mean, there is you are giving up the sort of prestige probably that he has here at this moment, and probably will retain for at least a little while if he stays here.
Yeah. And these are like probably the most important questions that we're not going to get the answers to, right? Like,
and did he ever say, like, I mean, I'm sure not when he got here, but do we have a sense of what he wants in his career?
He has gone on record saying that, like, I mean, there's a lot of people in Argentina who wanted him to come back to River after he left Russia. And a lot of people who have played in Argentina who now play in MLS will tell you the same thing, that like I mean, like their heart is in Argentina, but as far as like financial security, family security, like quality of life, that MLS provides a balance of those things that very few other places can do. And also, there's an interview that Driussi was doing online. I can't remember. Seemed like just like a Zoom interview kind of thing. But he was talking about how he can get home at 3 a.m. after a game and have his front door unlocked, just walk in, his family in there, and feel completely safe with all of that. And so the combination of that.
We don't have like hooliganism. And I mean, there's probably a different kind of fandom that's probably very exciting in those countries, but also the part of fandom that's probably pretty terrible too.
Yeah. And so the combination of that kind of financial and like family security with the money is probably better here than it would be in Argentina, I would imagine, at a player of his caliber. And then also you're talking about like being the big fish in the little pond and just like being adored by the fans here. That's something that you're not going to find many other places. That being said, he's in the prime of his career, like entering the prime of his career. If he has these ambitions that a lot of these top class athletes do, this is his chance to like,
if he's dreamed of the EPL, like, well, how do you put that up against anything? If that's sort of what your goal has been your whole life, how do you fight that? Can I ask what happens to Rigoni? Like, I mean, he came here because of Sebastian. Yeah.
Yeah. No? I mean, I think
it's conflicting stories on that, right?
Okay.
I think it probably helped him come here.
Okay.
But like, I've seen people suggest that like, oh, he's definitely going to leave if Driussi leaves, or like Driussi won't leave because Rigoni just came here. And I mean, these guys are pros. Like they'd probably be a little bit sad that they didn't get to play together longer, but they're not going to change their decision based on it. Okay. And Rigoni has a contract here, and he came here and knew what he signed up for. It's not going to change anything except for maybe they'll be a little bit sad they didn't get to play together longer.
And then now that I've taken over your show, will you tell me about the other Argentinian? So is Pochettino just like on the roster now?
Yeah. Jeremiah, you want to take that one?
I'll take that one. Yeah. So he's not going back to River, and I still do not believe
he's under contract with us.
He's under contract in Austin. Absolutely. Okay. I still do not believe that he will play another game in an Austin uniform. I think they'll find another place to loan him out. I think they could take a buyout, but I think that would be pretty expensive. But I just don't see...
They can do one buyout
a year, right, on the total roster. So I think they've loaned him out somewhere else, and they recoup some amount of money, which is probably less than they put into him. But given the way that he did not seem to work at all with Josh Wolf, like I just don't see how he comes back and fits into this system. And like it doesn't seem like he's going to fundamentally change the way he plays, and it doesn't seem like Josh is all of a sudden going to be super flexible. So I don't think he'll ever play another game in Austin. I don't know. What do you think, Landon?
No, I agree. I will be very surprised if he does. And I mean, I could be wrong. We could be wrong. He could come back and be a changed man and wants to do what Josh asks him to. But I would be very shocked if we see him in Verde again.
Yeah, he was real frustrating to watch last year.
And he was
a nice
really
way to say it.
Yeah, and Josh called him out, right? I mean, specifically in multiple post-game press conferences. It wasn't like just a under the surface frustrating. It was like that guy is floating around and not doing what he's supposed to do, and he should be different. Kind of frustrating by Josh, which is pretty clear.
Well, now I'm just going to be nervous about Driussi.
So Transfermarkt is a German website that they kind of specialize in valuating players and saying, we think this player is worth this much money. They just did an update of a lot of players, and it included some MLS guys. Driussi was one of them. They changed his valuation from 10 million to 15 million. And this was in euros. So that would be a little higher. I don't know what the conversion is right now, but what do we think it would take, Jeremiah, for Austin to say yes? Like, what's the number that we think makes it worth it?
I mean, I think 15 million is a very tempting number because that's more than twice what they paid for him. And that's the kind of number that you have to respect if the player wants out, right? Like you said earlier, if it was 6, then you're like, yeah, that's not fair market value. But I'm like, at 15, like, you have to start listening. My real fear is that they did such a good job of hitting on him and speaking to Pochettino and Rigoni, TBD to this point, some others. Like, I would be really, really worried about anybody's ability to replace Driussi with somebody who's like Driussi. Even if we get 15 million for him and we're buying for 10 or 12 or whatever the profit we decide to make. Like, that's my big concern on this deal.
Do we get that money? Is that how it works? Like, we get it?
Well,
our team?
okay. So
sorry. I know it's all weird because the MLS owns everything, but
you don't get to use it all on the team. No.
Okay.
So $15 million. Let's say
I feel
it's
like you need one of
$15
those boards behind you with the with the strings, Landon, to explain this to me. Okay, go.
$15 million would put that would be the 5th highest outgoing transfer in MLS history. And so to put it into context there, and like how hard of that would be hard to say no to.
Yes.
And so if it were 15, then MLS, I think, takes like a 5% cut of that. It used to be like 25%, and they changed that with the last CBA. So I think MLS takes a 5% cut. The rest of it goes back to Austin FC, but they are only allowed to use 1 million of it. They can transfer 1 million of it into GAM, general allocation money.
I
love the look on your face right now.
I was like, oh no.
So they would be able to use that on the rest of the team.
Okay.
But then, I mean, so like, let's say the other however many million, the other 14 million go into Anthony Precourt's pocket. He can choose to use that on another DP or not. Because like DP money doesn't come out of the salary budget. Like, you can just spend whatever you want on that. You could use it to reinvest in another designated player. And then 1 million of it would go to salary budget money. You could use that to improve the team. And so I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, with that money, if they give us 15, 20 million, we could buy 2 or 3 Driussis. And it's like, oh, it's not that simple though, because just because you pay a lot of money for a player doesn't mean they're going to be as good as Driussi was. Cause he was, I think, like the 21st most expensive player salary wise in the league last year, and was in the top 2. As far as performance went. And so,
but he fit
pay
really
a lot
well.
of money for guys.
I mean, he clearly fit with the team too.
Yeah.
Like,
and so finding the right person is not easy, even if the money is really good. I mean, we could use it to improve the team, but it's not easy. And so it would be a tough thing. So, I mean, at this point, how are we feeling? Do we think this is like leaning more towards happening or not happening?
Him leaving?
Yeah.
Not happening. He'll be here. That's from my heart.
I'm like, you know what? I'm going with heart too. He'll be here. It'll be fine. We're gonna survive this.
I think if there's one thing that we can take solace in, it is the fact that we have not heard anything else out of anybody.
When is the transfer market open for this? Like, when?
I mean, it's not open now. It'll be January.
Yeah, we would know. Okay,
Leeds
that's what
could
I thought.
buy him.
Okay.
And so, like, I will have to hold our breath until the end of January, really.
Oh
But
my gosh.
Exactly.
End of January.
yeah. But I would imagine, like I said, there's usually a lot of smoke with these things. And so I would follow Tom Bogert on Twitter, and he's probably going to be the first person to figure it out if it's happening.
Interesting.
All right, let's move on to actually one more bit of precarious news. Diego Fagundes is currently in Spain.
Oh, I can't even look at his Instagram. It's killing me. Diego, don't do it.
We mentioned on a recent show that he signed with David Villa's agency, got a new agent. His father is no longer his agent. And we said that it doesn't necessarily mean he's leaving, but it means that he's trying to get paid, whether that's here or somewhere else. And so he goes to Spain on vacation, but also happens to meet up with David Villa in Madrid while he's there. And so I think maybe it is a vacation, but also that maybe they're doing a little business on the side there. I'm still not super worried about this one. I think if Austin gives him a competitive offer, he seems happy here. He seems to want to be here. And so as long as Austin can be competitive with their offer, I think he'll stay. And with as much money as we just freed up in kind of dead weight on the roster, they have the space to pay him the money. So I'm still not super concerned about that one.
I'm going to trust
in happier
you.
news.
I'm going to trust you, Landon.
In happier news, John Gallagher gets signed to is it a 4-year extension, Jeremiah?
It is a 4-year extension.
Yeah.
That's
so,
great.
y'all are feeling good about this one?
He was great this year. I mean, he played way above the level from last year. And I'm not good at this like you guys are, but it was clear that he covered a lot of ground on a team that is, especially the back line, is not that fast. Like, there were definitely moments where we were very fortunate to have him.
Yeah, I'm just guessing with the length of this deal. Like, on Austin's side, they probably offered him a longer deal at lesser money per year to protect their side of the investment. So, like, I'm assuming he's probably not. He got security in lieu of like a giant raise, and so I feel like that's good money for Austin too.
Yeah, I mean, he was on $155,000 this year. A guy like John Gallagher, I can understand him wanting the security because he's been a lot of places and he's had to travel
and he didn't
the
like
globe.
It. I mean,
No,
when
he
he
did not
talks
like
about, was it Scotland?
He was in Scotland.
When he talks about his
for
time
a
there, you're
while.
like, oof, that was rough. Clearly, just the like day-to-day living was hard for him there. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that this is like a whole much better experience in that way.
Yeah, just a guy who's had to travel the world to get minutes, not making that much money really. And so, I mean, we look at
He's on the
155,000.
tifos.
Yeah, we look at that money compared to like Driussi or whatever and say, oh, he's not making anything. But that money in like real life money, it's pretty good. And so I imagine he did get a nice little salary increase. He's getting that guaranteed for the next 4 years with an option year on top of that. It seems like a good deal for both sides. And just looking at the kind of player he is and what his output was this year, guys like John Gallagher are like the kind of like the bedrock of solid MLS teams. You get these, I know he's not entirely domestic, but for all intents and purposes, he's very comfortable here, lived in the US for a long time, does not take an international
ball, right?
Yeah, Notre Dame. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Notre Dame. Yeah.
And does not take up an international roster spot, is not super expensive, is a hard worker. Like
He can
these are the
play
guys,
almost anywhere.
right?
Like, he
These
can
are the
fill
guys
in.
good MLS teams have in spades on their roster. And so I love this move. I like really, really like it. The fact that we're locking a guy like this in for the next 4 years. He'll be 27 at the start of the next season. I think he turns 27 in February. And so that will put him under contract until he's 31. With an option for the year of 32. When we interviewed him, he told us he was on the Tom Brady diet. And so we know the man's taking care of his body. He's going to last until 32.
Yeah,
and
it's
who's
great.
it? Like Graham Zusier, what I think was his role model. I think when he talked about it, who like who started as a winger and then like played a defender till he was like 34, 35 or something. So like,
and talked about longevity as one of the factors in him being like happy with playing in defense. So I love this one.
Yay.
Anything else that we're missing here?
I have one more
Jeremiah?
question. I have one more question for you, Jessica. Now that we're like in the
Okay.
off season, what are we supposed to do with our time? Should we develop hobbies? Should I find outside interests?
Well, I mean, we
What's
are
the-
fortunate this year because we have the World Cup.
That's fair.
So,
we can,
like,
we can
we
still
are gonna have
identify
a-
as soccer.
We're gonna have a lot of soccer in our lives. I got lots of feelings about the World Cup, but I'm still gonna watch it.
I got a New York Times puzzle subscription to fill my time.
Yeah, that's smart. I would like to read more books. You would think with my job that I would read lots of books, but I actually don't. So maybe I should take my 90 minutes that I get every week now. I mean, that is one thing about soccer that is glorious, is that it is not a ton of time. It's not like being a football, like American football fan. So you don't have to fill that much. I don't know. What am I doing? I'm into puzzles. People should get into puzzles. I'm like an old lady. I'm just going to read books and do puzzles.
So yeah, any Austin FC fans looking to fill your time, puzzles is where it's at.
But also, like, I mean, sure, there are a professional team, but like the basketball season's back, college basketball in town. Go down to the Moody Center. I know the women lost tonight, though, to UConn at UConn. That's a bummer. But there's like there's still a lot of good sport in town in this moment. So you can still go cheer. I went to my first UT volleyball game a couple weeks ago, and that was amazing. Talk about, okay, that was like maybe the closest. That fan culture is real intense. Like,
Oh, really?
yes, I was so impressed with the fan knowledge, not just of what was happening on court, but just the traditions of cheering for that volleyball team. So everyone knows what to do all the time. So you know how in volleyball you can hit the ball 3 times and you got to get it over the net. And they, oh God, this is terrible. What do they say 3 words. Oh, and now I can't remember what they
Bump,
are.
set, spike.
No. It's like go Texas fight or whatever. And the whole crowd will do it each time. And they're so good. The crowd is so good at it. And they're so jazzed to be there. And one of my friends is Danny Davis, who's at the Statesman, who covers the women's volleyball. And I went over to him during the game and I was like, is this normal? Like, is this what happens at every match? And he said, yes, that it just feels like that all the time. So that is something you could do. Is there is still that kind of smart fervor fandom in town that you could go be a part of.
All right, I'm in. That sounds good. And I would think it's very kid friendly too, but probably in a way that being the supporters section sometimes isn't in an Austin FC game. I feel like I could take
Sure.
the boys and feel good about a UT volleyball game.
Let me tell you one thing though. That was so funny. So I went with my friend Amira. She's very good at making me like leave the house. And so Danny told me this was a tradition. So it's been going on a very long time, is that the men's swimming and diving team goes and they stand on the sideline in their Speedos and cheer for the volleyball team. I was like, what is happening? Like at one point they literally had a dude, they were, like almost crowd surfing him, like holding them up with it. And he was pretending to swim in his cap and Speedos. And Danny was like, they've been doing this as long as I have been covering this team. And then a neighbor of mine recently told me that it's been like decades that this is what the men's swimming and diving do. So
We already have Speedos in the Austin FC
See?
supporter section, so we need to incorporate some of these traditions.
there you go. You need to do the fake swimming, apparently.
All right. Well, Jessica, thanks for coming on the show. You were a great resource to us and a great guide for us earlier in the season in one of the less pleasurable parts of covering this team. And so we're happy to have you on to talk about some more fun things this time.
Well, I've told you guys repeatedly, this is one of my most favorite podcasts. So I am really thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me on again.
Do you want, where can people find your work? Do you want people to find your work? I think you
Sure.
told them not to last time.
No, it's fine. Well, I mean, if Twitter is still around by the time you all hear this, Jessica W. Luther is my handle. I'm on I do Instagram, at the same handle, Jessica W. Luther, and that's also my website. So you can find me. I am findable.
All right. Well, this is fun, Jessica. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks,
Thank
Jessica.
you guys.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Property Group.
This show is made possible by Sage Wilson Property Group. If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Property Group.
And as always, Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education.
You can go to fef.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's fef.law. All right, we are back. We want to thank Jessica one more time for hanging out with us. She's a joy as always. Jeremiah, let's get into the off-season schedule. So on the 7th, is that right? The 7th, there was the two-day
trade window. Yep.
Trade window, which exists essentially so that teams can offload folks before the expansion draft if they want to. And that happened. There was a few moves.
And there were several. I think the ones that were most relevant to Austin, because they're the ones that are within the state, is Fafa Picault went to Nashville, and Tim Parker went to St. Louis City. So I guess they traded him to St. Louis rather than leaving him exposed to being selected by St. Louis. But I mean,
this is a weird study of MLS because Tim Parker actually was left exposed.
Oh, really?
Like he was going to be exposed in the expansion draft, and because his salary is really high, and so they had this weird thing. I don't know, like. I don't fully understand how it's beneficial, but like because expansion teams have so much allocation money, they then paid allocation money, but Houston is keeping part of his salary on the books. And so like they did it in a way that benefited both teams in a way that I still don't fully understand, but this is the MLS wizardry that happens sometimes.
So it's almost like Joe Corona going to Austin last year, maybe a little bit, like in terms of weirdness.
I'd say this one seems to be a good deal for both teams, where the Joe Corona thing was a bad deal for both teams.
Was a good deal for nobody. I agree. Yeah, and then on the 11th, St. Louis had their expansion draft picked. They got to take 5 players. The teams that were exempt were Austin FC, Atlanta United, DC United, LAFC, and NYCFC. I thought they made some pretty interesting selections, didn't you?
Yeah,
that was good.
Overall, it seems like a pretty good expansion draft. It has proven historically that I don't really know why, but I think there's probably some things like conversations being had behind the scenes or like salary restrictions, why certain people who look maybe like obvious moves in the expansion draft almost never get picked. And so I think it's probably a much harder thing to do right than a lot of people give anybody credit for. That being said, Austin FC's expansion draft has proven historically to be bad. Like whatever we thought of it in the moment, we got very little out of it. It looks like maybe that like St. Louis is going to get some value out of this one.
Especially, I think their first 2 picks were really strong picks, right? Nicholas Gioacchini and Indiana Vasilev were both like players that have a lot of talent and potential. And then I love their last guy, Jake LaCava. Maybe has he's like the Kamal Miller of their pick. So he's like the 5th pick. He spent about 5 minutes on the club officially, and then he got flipped to Inter Miami.
Miami hopes he's Kamal Miller.
Yeah, exactly. So he picked up some GAM. They picked him up for some GAM, which is again just MLS still. But it seems like they've done a pretty good job of building this roster from the start. Of course, I think a lot of people said the same thing about Austin the first year, and that turned out not to be the case. But St. Louis seems to be doing things right. Yeah,
except their general manager is saying that they are not going to sign a third DP and they do not need a third DP, which is interesting, but we'll see how that works out for them.
Exactly.
I think the next thing coming up, this show, we're recording this show on the 14th, which is the deadline for picking up player options. But anybody who had an option year in their contract had to be picked up by today. Otherwise, they'll all go into either re-entry or free agency. And so today was the last day. A lot of names on here. Who are the names that stood out to you on this one?
There's a few names. One, Matt Hedges out in Dallas. The guy's been kind of a legend. He's a super strong player. The downside on him is he's 32 and he made $900,000 last year. So I think that he's probably out. I guess I'll go to the ones that I thought were up. Maybe could fill spots that Austin needs. One is Brad Smith, who's was injured last year. But available left back. We need assistance at fullback no matter where. I don't know. This is actually a question we haven't talked about much on the show, but I think we could use either a left back or a right back because John Gallagher can play either side. So
I agree. I think if you in either place, if you get a starter or depth, I'd say go for the best available, and then let John Gallagher.
And then knowing John Gallagher has the flexibility to go either way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I that's the way I'm thinking about it. I don't know if Claudio Reyna's thinking about it the same way, but that's the way I would think about it. And I would be comfortable with Gallagher on either side.
Yeah, so that's Brad Smith was DC United, big deal in Seattle, but had a 2022 ACL injury, so he had his contract option decline. The other person who's sort of in the same position is Jorge Villafana from the Galaxy, right? Who missed all.
He was at Portland for a while, and then at the Galaxy after that.
He missed all of 22 with an injury, but again, a guy that's a talent and has proven himself in the league that I could see being an option. But you got to take a chance on either of those players. So I thought those both were interesting, and then the other one was Ola Kamara at forward, just because I think everybody agrees that maybe that's the position of the least depth that Austin has, and he's been good over the last 3 years. So he seems like he could be an option.
Kamara's 33 now, and he was on $1.5 million this year, which we can't pay him that much.
That's fair.
If it's on that money, then no thanks. But if we could get it down to the money that Maxi's on, $600,000-$700,000 to be super sub late game goal scorer, because I think he started 15 games this year and had 9 goals, and so that's not a bad record for not starting every game. And so, in 33 it's maybe getting too old to start every game, but he's already not doing that and proving effective in that role. So, if the money's right, I could see that one. I quite like the Brad Smith one. I think the $590K that he was on this year is maybe a little too high, but if we could get a bit of that trimmed off, since he's kind of pushing the end of his prime and has had some injuries lately, maybe we could get a discount on him. But that profile I think is interesting. What about Matt Hedges? I kind of don't think he's going to leave. I kind of think he'll just negotiate as high of a contract as he can get to kind of finish his career in Dallas
and stay in Dallas. I mean, he seems like
would you want
Dallas
to see
guy.
Austin go after him?
Well, I thought I would, just based upon the name, but then this contract. The fact that he made $900K last year, and then some of the underlying numbers that I saw posted, I think on Twitter today or whatever, makes me think maybe he's not that much better than Julio Cascante, where it makes sense to make that kind of deal.
I think, maybe Matt Hedges 2 or 3 years ago, not just age-wise, but performance-wise. He wasn't as good this year as he has been in years past. But I don't think I would want that one necessarily. One that stuck out to me is Derek Etienne Jr. for the Crew. So he's 25 years old. He had 33 appearances with the Crew this year, had 9 goals, 6 assists, and is only on $175,000. I think because of his age and because of kind of the way he's raised his own profile over the last couple of years, he'll demand more money than that. I also am not sure that he would willingly come to a team where it'd be pretty clear that he's not the starter. I imagine he's going to be looking for a place where he can be at least promised the possibility to fight for a starting spot. And maybe he could with Austin, but I think that's one definitely looking into, but maybe not very likely to actually happen. One person that did not have their option renewed that I thought was interesting from an Austin perspective anyway, is Philip Mayaka from the Colorado Rapids.
The non-questionable number 1 overall choice in the Super Draft in 2021, right? Philip Mayaka, that one.
And he spent most of his time with the Switchbacks, their USL affiliate. He has made 0 MLS appearances for the Colorado Rapids. I think he was on the bench some, but had 0 appearances. So, I mean, I think there's some, like, as far as the expansion picks or expansion roster build, I think there's some obvious errors made by Claudio Reyna and company, but it seems like picking Danny Pereira over Philip Mayaka in that draft has
that
proven a good choice.
I think so. Yeah, I guess the biggest name here, which I don't think is of any interest to Austin, I saw Driussi Zardes also out of contract. But
yeah, I know
good
whenever it was rumored that the Crew was shopping him, I kind of wanted Austin to go after him, but I think he ended up injured and not really playing a lot the back half of the season. I think if Colorado picks him up, they owe the Crew a bunch of money too. And so they're almost certainly not going to pick him up, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with him, but I don't think I want him in Austin at this point. So I think the next prominent date is going to be November 16th, which is the day after the show comes out. And that is when free agency officially opens. And so we won't necessarily see moves happening immediately, but that's when they can start happening.
Yeah, so we did this Verde Letters with Phil West on the Striker, which we would encourage everybody to read if you haven't already. And one of the questions was, what players should Austin be targeting via trade or in free agency? And you had a couple suggestions for players, both New York City FC players. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, so one of them I've found out since writing that and sending it over to Phil that is probably not an option. Anton Tinnerholm has all but said he's going to leave the league, likely going back to, I think he's Swedish, probably going back to Sweden. And so he was one of the options. And he's a 32-year-old right back. Is coming back from an injury, but was really, really good. One of the best fullbacks in the league for a few years there. The other one is also NYCFC defender, but Alexander Collins, he's been, I'd say, like up there on the same level as the Philadelphia center backs. Really, really good for the last few years. He is a free agent right now. There's still a chance he stays at NYCFC. He'll be, I think like some of the MLS pundits are guessing he may not be able to get a DP contract, but will get like max TAM, like as much as you can give a person without it being a DP contract. So there's going to be other teams fighting for this guy, but I think Austin should go after him. Like if you're looking at this Austin team, as far as like places where you can upgrade within the league, and they're definitely going to be better than what we already have. There's not a lot of options where like you can find the guy who's definitely better and afford them. And I think this is one of those sweet spots where it might be tough. There might be other teams willing to give him more or who just have more available to give him. But I think Claudio Reyna should be looking at this and doing the math and telling Collins, like, if we have the money to give him a max TAM contract, we should offer it to him. And it's Claudio Reyna brought both of these guys into NYCFC, so he'll know them. They'll have known what it's like to play under him. Not necessarily the same coach, but like not so different of a style of play. Know what kind of culture that Reyna likes to set within his teams, and so we'll hope that would be a positive in any negotiations that may or may not happen. But I think this would like put Austin another level up if we could get a guy like that on the team.
Yeah, that's exciting. I guess that's interesting and exciting. And the one thing that we get these questions a lot, and the one thing that I want to make sure and point out is that if we'd had this discussion at the end of last year, which we probably had this discussion at the end of last year, like would Maxi Arruti or Ethan Finley have been anybody we would have talked about? Like probably not. So no matter who we talk about, we're probably going to be totally surprised by the guys Austin gets, and hopefully we'll just trust that Claudio does the right thing and understands the roster, because it's just hard. You get the whole world out there, and we mention this all the time, but they're working on so many deals at once, and they almost all fall through. And so there's probably guys with these profiles and guys with other profiles that work, or guys similar to these players that we're working on right now, and we'll just see who makes it across the line. in terms of building the roster for next year.
Yeah, so not to go back to a sore subject, but talking about Driussi potentially leaving, I think one of the blessings there, we talked about how difficult it would be to replace Driussi, because we would have the money to, yes, buy an expensive player, but there's zero guarantee that they would be anywhere near as good as he's been. I think the blessing in that case would be Austin would then certainly have the money to go after someone like Collins, right? Like you add $1 million in GAM to your pocket. That then, okay, like maybe we were pushing it with the other additions we needed to make, because we do have quite a few spots to fill in the roster. But that extra money gives you the ability to go after guys like this, some of these free agents, or maybe even transfers within the league, where you can go out and get a proven guy to come in and fill a hole, instead of speculating, bringing a guy in from abroad who we know doesn't always work out. If you can find a guy in the league who you know is really good and use that extra money to bring them in, this is the stuff that LAFC has done really well. And if Austin can kind of follow that model, then that would be really good signs for just keeping this team competitive and making them more competitive going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to. That's the comparison that I was going to make. It's like LAFC does a really good job of finding a way to get known and proven commodities in on money that makes sense, and they don't get super. I feel like they don't get super speculative or super cute. You know, they like have a good scouting department that does their homework. They know how to work within the league. They know how to work, outside the league. And I think it's a good model for Austin to follow if we have the kind of cash to splash around based upon sales. Still would prefer that to not happen and not have to make that choice. But it's not like the end of the world if they do.
Yeah, and because LAFC has consistently sold players, they have that extra allocation money to spend on guys like Ryan Hollingshead or Kellen Acosta, like guys like that. They have that money to bring those people in. All right, what else do we have, Jeremiah?
I don't know. I mean, like the World Cup's going to start. I feel like we would be like remiss to not talk about the World Cup at all. I guess overall, like, is this for you? Was this your like initial connection to soccer? I feel like with so many people, like, if they started watching the World Cup and then they pick up league play and then it kind of goes from there. Like, is that your soccer story or is it something different?
The World Cup solidified my fandom. So my story started with as many American college students, with a study abroad trip to Spain. And so FC Barcelona in the spring of 2010, when I did my semester abroad in college, was my first like love. That's what got me very interested in soccer. And then came home that summer and the 2010 World Cup was happening, and was home like on vacation with my family, I think, for a week. And that's all I did, was just sat there and watched that World Cup and watch soccer that whole week that we were there. And so, yeah, the World Cup is definitely what solidified my fandom and kind of sent me down that path.
Yeah, and I think for me too, it was for me it was like the '94 World Cup, and I was a kid, but I remember just the excitement around it because it was the first World Cup in the United States, and every game was exciting, and I grew up outside of Dallas, so like there were matches there, and that's my excitement about it. And then for a while I kind of grew to hate like I became a huge Premier League fan. It's like I started hating like international competition because I felt like all that happened was like Liverpool players went to international competition and they got hurt and couldn't play in the Premier League season. So like I've come all the way around on it. I thought one of the most interesting stats I saw out of it was this Toodle Ramen tweet, which is that MLS ended up with 36 players in the World Cup, which was the most of any league outside the Big Five, which I think is just a testament to the international development of the league, because it's not just U.S. players playing for the U.S. team or Canadian players for the Canadian team, but it's people from all around the world playing for clubs all around the world, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I think the most interesting number was Ecuador has 4 players. There are 4 Ecuadorian national team players playing in MLS, which is a huge number for like a team that's not even on this continent. But it shows, like, I guess, MLS scouting and the opportunity that's developing in South America for players in MLS. So I thought that's pretty cool. I don't know, like, do you want to do predictions? Do you think U.S. and Mexico both make it out of the out of group play? And if so, how far do they go?
I don't know. I really hope the U.S. can make it out of the group. After that, like, anything else is gravy.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I would just say if you really want to get into this, if you listen to what Cuva de Guitar, The Athletic,
Yes, I
Yeah,
finished
that's
it
good.
over the weekend.
that's my advice. Don't listen to us. Go listen to Sam and Paul do Cuva de Guitar, and you will understand everything about like the U.S. national team project and how the club got here and the challenges that lay ahead. But I feel like this is a get out of the group stage and lose in the first round and knockout play kind of performance for the U.S. team. And I feel like given the I don't know the Mexican roster as well, but given the heartburn from like people that I know who are Mexican fans, I feel like maybe Mexico's sort of in the same boat too.
So you asked if the World Cup was like my first connection, but I like for a long time I did not have a team that like this is my team that I root for. And the only team that I was like actually passionate about was the US national team. And so like, in that case, like in that sense, I do have like a strong emotional connection to it. And like this group of players, like I don't know, they're just fun, and like you want them to succeed. Like all these young guys, there seems to be like a really good culture and really good vibe in the locker room. And I think for as many things as people like to criticize Greg Berhalter for, and I think a lot of them are valid, I think one thing that he deserves a lot of credit for is for helping build that culture and like seems to really care about the players. Like with the dual national guys, like the guys who have the option to play for the U.S. and Mexico or the U.S. and another country, he'll bring them in and say like, yeah, I want you to see it. Come hang out with the guys. Then go to the other one too. Go to Mexico camp and see if you like that one better, and then just make the decision that's best for you. And like, I really like that. And so I think if nothing else, like on the sporting side, just like on a human side, I really want to see these kids succeed.
And do you feel, I mean, there's so much of the talk is like that this year's not really the year, right? And 2026 is what these guys are all playing toward because they're by far the youngest club in the field. Do you buy into that? Do you think that's the case? And then like how excited would you be to have like a top 10 in the world U.S. team in 2026 playing most of the World Cup on American soil?
Yeah, I mean, I think like expectations wise, that's probably the case. Like we said, we both said like we would be pretty happy if they make it out of the group stage and then lose. Like we would call that a success this year, right? I don't think the players are looking at it that way. I think they're going to say like we want to do as well as we can, and these guys are playing, most of them at pretty high levels, and so they're competitive guys. They want to do well. But I think as far as a fan perspective and like in hindsight after this one, yeah, I think everyone will look at this very differently than the one in 2026 when it's on American soil for the most part. And these guys who are the core of this team are all going to be entering their prime years going into that one.
Yeah, and even some guys like Ricardo Pepi didn't make it. Like
Right.
I'd forgot about Giancarlo Busio, but you would think that in 4 years he's going to be part of the mix. And then even like just the whole core is super young. Obviously, some center backs need to develop, but you can see how this is a team that should be set up to succeed in the future. So I'm gonna enjoy it. I think we got the first. Wales is 1 week from today, right? On the 21st.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then England's the week of Thanksgiving, and then we'll know pretty soon how things are going to go. But it's not a super easy group. I think it said it's the only group with everybody in the top 20, maybe in the world.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
So it's like England's whatever England is, like 4 or 5, and then I think the other teams are like 17, 19, and 20 or whatever. They're still all officially in the top 20 in the world. So there's not going to be any easy matches. But yeah, it's an exciting thing for the whole world to get together and be able to check out once every 4 years.
All right, I think we've about covered it, Jeremiah. Is there anything else you wanted to hit before we wrap up?
I think we hit on all the important matters of the week, and it was great to talk to Jessica again, to have her back on and talk about happy, fun soccer stuff and not like awful social issues. We should probably do that more often.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, before we finish up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And then if you want to continue this conversation, come find us on Twitter at lviajero87 and jbentley_ATX, and then at Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter and Instagram. And then sign up for the Patreon, where we talked about like merch and stuff last week a little bit. This week, we actually asked for suggestions about what kind of merch Patreon folks want to get. And people who aren't members of the Patreon, let us know what merch would get you to become a member of the Patreon, if that's the only way you could get it. Because we want to be stuff that people want and to make it worth your while. So get at us about that. We'd like to encourage you to visit the Striker, where you can read the Verde letters that we recently helped Phil West do, and then lots of other great soccer coverage. And you can get a 30% discount with the code MoonTower22 with a capital M.
Yeah,
Anything else, Jeremiah?
I was going to say one good thing about that is that so the Striker was originally just the 3 Texas clubs, but the coverage has expanded. So I read an article about Atlanta United today, read a good article about LAFC's moves. I confused Carlos Bocanegra and Steve Cherundolo, so I was very confused by who I was reading about when I was doing those pieces. But there's broad coverage of the league now in a way that you don't get in a lot of other places. So I encourage everybody to check that out.
All right. Well, thanks everybody so much for listening. Like we said last week, we're not going anywhere during the off season. We'll be back next week with a new episode of Moon Tower Soccer, where we will likely at some point take some listener questions, maybe do some Thanksgiving content, probably have some more special guests to be confirmed. But come back. We'll be hanging out, having some fun. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.